And a pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome to the Brevard Sports Network. Alan Slaughter-Zinski, Jackson Robb, and Anthony Knockreiner with you tonight on the UbrZati High School Football Preview Show. And, man, we're going to have a lot of fun here tonight. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of stuff. This is a good show. It's going to be a good show tonight because there are a lot of topics we need to touch on. It's been 2 weeks since we've been here, and all hell has broken loose, from Spaces to arguing with people in the north part of the county at 1 o'clock in the morning over rankings. I don't know why I engaged in such idiotic behavior, but I can't resist. It is what it is. But I did wear my Cocoa Tiger state championship T-shirt that my friend Daryl bought me from last year. Not Daryl Duran, another friend of mine. And I wore this in honor of my new friend I made Monday night on Facebook and comments and all the fun that he and I were having on Brevard Sports. So I wanted him to know that from the bottom of my heart. All right. So welcome into the show, Anthony Knockreiner and Jackson Robb. We got the big Titusville helmet on the table there as well tonight, honoring the only undefeated team in Brevard County. Gentlemen, before we talk about the Titusville Terriers, Knock, we'll start with you. How's your week been, buddy?
It's been great, man. Just excited and, looking forward to the game that we've got tomorrow night and ready to dig into this. I'm really learning a lot about these FHSAA rankings. I will say that I poured some energy into looking at those and the remaining schedules that all these teams got. And I got questions for you, and I'm sure we'll answer those for a lot of listeners, too.
No, I sure will, because these rankings, they bring them out. You know, it's funny because last year at this time, I wrote 3 or 4 articles about the rankings, and every one of them were wrong. That's how confusing I was about them last year. The athletic director at Cocoa cleared it up for me and sent me a nice list of, how to go through the rankings and what I need to look for and how it actually works. Because you can win a district championship and not host a first-round game. Or you can be a non-district winner and host a first-round game. Yes, I know it all sounds crazy, but we're going to talk about it. Jackson, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. Getting ready for high school football tomorrow night and the weekend.
All right, guys, as we always do on here each and every week, let's just do it now because we didn't get a chance to do a show last week, so that would have been the week which we would have given out the Florida Tough Football Player of the Month. Now, there's only one. There's not an offensive guy or a defensive guy. It is the player whom we believe best exemplifies Florida tough football. And, well, wouldn't you know that that football player comes from, let's everybody do it in unison. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The Cocoa Tigers. And that's Javen Boggs. Javen Boggs is our player of the month. And, guys, look, I mean, you're looking at his highlights on the screen, and we're going to give you his statistics here in just a second. But the thing that makes Javen Boggs such a special player is, and how he exemplifies Florida tough, is he goes across the middle. He catches those 4 or 5 yard little quick screens or bubble screens or whatever they are. And, man, he's gone. He's not afraid to take a hit. He's not afraid to deliver a hit. He's not afraid to sacrifice his body. He blocks downfield for other, receivers, his fellow receivers. And then you just can't ignore the month that he had in Knock. I think, from the Venice game, you did the Venice game, right?
Yep.
So you had Venice and St. Thomas. You saw him in both of those games. This young man is a special talent. And if he's not the best football player right now in Brevard County, he's damn near close to it. But Javen Boggs, congratulations. You are the American Air and Plumbing Cool Zone Florida Tough Football Player of the Month. And Knock, your thoughts on Javen Boggs.
I mean, just an electrifying player. The fact that you and I did the Jones game, Boggs wasn't as involved in that game. That was more Teeter and Bragg in that one. But then Boggs just explodes against Venice and even more so against St. Thomas Aquinas. I know we got some of the highlights showing right now, but the fact that the opening touchdown they scored was a huge play, and it was simply a slant to Javen Boggs, and he took it the rest of the way. I don't know if they keep yards after catch officially. Maybe Coach Schneider and Franco do in their own stat sheets. I don't believe it's on Max Preps, but I would really like to see what his yards after catch are, considering the fact that he's had a lot of big plays that have come off short passes.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson, you're going to see him tomorrow night against Seminole. I know you have thoughts on Javen.
Yeah, I mean, just the stats telling for me. I mean, he's just it's incredible. 600 yards through their first 5 games and 12 touchdowns, which is almost more than double everyone else in the county. So, yeah, I mean, Boggs has come out, immediately had a gel with Brady Hart. I mean, they have plenty of great receivers, C.J. Bragg, Nicky Teeter as well, but Boggs has been able to kind of take over there as the lead receiver and, run away with it. So, what he's been able to do, especially underneath, he hasn't had a lot of – I mean, he's had some deep plays, but a lot of them, it's just been him turning it into a big play just with his legs and his ability. So, yeah, I'm impressed so far with what I've seen out of Boggs, and I'm excited to see him in person tomorrow night.
And there's his stats on the screen, 41 receptions, 601 yards, and a dozen touchdowns. I know Ryder Veris over at Merritt Island's having a really good year. There's some other wide receivers out there having a really good year. But, listen, Javen has, to me, just exploded out of the gate and certainly is worthy. Javen will receive a plaque, and he'll receive $50 worth of gift certificates to wherever he wants these gift certificates to be. American Air and Plumbing, Brevard's go-to pros for Florida Tough, AC and Plumbing Services, and proud sponsor of the Brevard Sports Network Florida Tough Player of the Month. I thought about doing 2, but I think it would really diminish the award. He's our first ever winner. Trust American Air and Plumbing for fast AC repairs or rugged AC systems like their Florida edition, built to withstand our brutal Florida climate, or the revolutionary DAC and AC with rebates up to $1,800 and warranties up to 12 years. So let's give it up, guys, for Javen Boggs. Nice job, Javen. And tomorrow night we'll have to get an interview with him. Tomorrow night, the post-game show will be live from the studio here tomorrow. We got a very busy day. We have Cape Coast Conference swimming tomorrow, and then football tomorrow night. That Cape Coast Conference swimming is no joke, out in the sun all day by the water. So we'll leave there. We'll go to football. We'll come back to the studio tomorrow night to recap the night in football. And then we've got youth football coming up on Saturday. Caleb, I know, is going to be at Suntre Riviera. I am actually going to go do the Rockledge 12 and 14U games this week. So looking forward to that as well. Okay, guys, let's jump in and talk about real quick as we take a look back on last week. 12-11, O'Galley over Merritt Island. Heritage blows out Vieira 38-0. Cocoa, the same exact score over Treasure Coast. Satellite in a defensive battle gets by Bayside 21-14. Melbourne with a shutout win over Harmony. Palm Bay all over Astronaut. Windermere Prep beats Cocoa Beach. I got some answers, by the way, about Cocoa Beach. Trinity Christian, it says 13-13, but they take down Rockledge last week, 19-13. MCC, we're going to talk about MCC coming up as well, 49-0 over Father Lopez. Holy Trinity over Halifax Academy. Titusville over Space Coast in an 8-man. CCA, Calvary Chapel over COLC, 43-6, and Masters over Merritt Island Christian. I know Calvary Chapel played tonight. Before we get to the schedule, guys, there are a couple issues that I really want to discuss tonight. And the first thing I want to talk about is this MCC thing. And I want to kind of clear the air a little bit about this. I got some emails, I got some messages asking me, why would we put this out? Why would we report on this? And so the answer to that question is simple. It is because we are a media outlet, and if you read the story, it's just simply nothing other than the release that Melbourne Central Catholic sent us. And we got a job to do. We reported on the Vieira story, and I know that was a big-time point of contention in a lot of those comments about the story with MCC. But the bottom line is we don't control what goes on in these investigations. All we want to try to do is to refrain, like others, in giving opinion-based commentary until we get to a point like this. This show's about opinion all night long. But the reason we do that is because the school sent the release. And the reason that they want that done is because they don't want somebody to look on the sidelines for a couple of weeks and not see their coach. And then we all know how rumors travel. They wanted the factual information to be out there, and they wanted everybody to know that they were involved in the appeals process. Well, that appeals process, I believe, if I checked with my sources today, that appeal process for Coach Hooks will be heard on Monday morning, and then next week we will break down exactly what the investigation was about and what was found, and you be the judge from there. So that's on the MCC story. The other thing, guys, is whether you agree with NIL or whether you disagree with NIL, the Georgia High School Athletic Association this week passed the right for student athletes, not just football. This is not a football-based thing. Granted, it is the sport that it helps the most, but it is not a football-based thing. Anybody can go out there and get themselves a name, image, and likeness deal. So with that said, Georgia passed it this week. A couple of stipulations, one of them being they cannot use the logo of the school. They cannot use the school's name. So all of that has to be done. Basically, guys, when it comes to NIL in high school, it's for alumni, former players, guys that went to Florida State, guys that went to Miami, alumni that want recruits to come to their school. That's what it's for. I mean, let's tell the truth here. That's what this is, okay? That's what this breaks down to. You will be able to have a guy that goes to Florida State, went to Florida State, say he wants a big-time XYZ recruit to come. You know what? He's got a business. He's going to pay this kid to promote his business. But you know what? On the side, hey, buddy, Florida State. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackson.
Yeah, I could go on about this, but I don't like it at all. And I'll start with this. I mean, the whole beginning of NIL in college comes from the fact that colleges were benefiting off of these players by themselves. They were the ones making profits. The whole point of NIL at first, which now it's a completely different animal even in that scene, but it was to get players to buy jerseys, get their cleats. They could sell them. Like, you could sell more of that stuff. The point in high school is high schools aren't making money off the kids. Like, this is just
like they are in college.
Yeah, that was the point, was to give the kids their ability to profit as well. In high school, nobody is.
Right.
The whole point of high school sports to me, and although it might get blown out of proportion at times, is to go play sports for the school you attend. The high school that you go to, that's close to your house maybe. Now you go play sports there. That's what it's supposed to be. I don't like the fact that this could turn this into a recruiting battle that goes to the big schools or the private schools.
That's what it's going to be.
I know, and that's going to go to the big schools, the private schools. It affects Brevard County. I don't know how much we would benefit or get hurt, but I know the bigger, like Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando's are going to get blown up even more just by the fact of the money there and just the density of businesses that are willing, and the fact that things like. Things are just going to get blown out. That's not high school sports. That's not the point.
You're not going to get, and I had a good conversation about this the other day, you're not going to get ABC Chevrolet to sponsor a high school kid. That's not going to happen.
No.
Okay? And I know that that's what these student athletes see when they see this. 31 states now have NIL as part of their student athletes for high school. The FHSAA has adopted procedures that they're looking at. It's coming, and you better believe that either sometime next year about this time, I'd like to see them enact NIL next winter if they do it. I want to see them just move past fall next year. I don't want to deal with this for football.
No, I agree with Jackson. I'm not a big fan of it. Let's keep college where that's at. Here's my question, though. How are they going to do it? You can't use the high school logos during these things. And at the same time, too, these are high school kids, so that means mom and dad's got to get involved because these high school kids can't sign.
It's the same way that...
And Uncle Sam's going to get a cut.
The same way that 247 and those outlets do. When you see pictures of those kids, you rarely see pictures of those kids in their high school football. You don't see those school logos on a lot of those 247 photos, right? They're wearing 247 jerseys, right?
True.
You know, I mean, that's what this is for. This is for recruiting purposes. This is for the alumni of the big-time schools to say, hey, you know what? Hey, you know, we're going to back you. Not the school, the alumni. You understand?
But high schools have the alumni bases that do that?
What high schools what?
So you're talking about colleges, right?
I'm
you're
talking
not
about college.
Yeah, no, that makes
right.
sense. But high school, I mean, I don't understand.
No, that's not. They're not. That's not what I'm saying. The guys are going to come from the big universities with the money, and they're going to say, you know, I'm going to give you $500 to promote this product. Let me tell you where I went to school. Let me tell you what Florida State has to offer.
Ah, I see.
Let me tell you what Miami has to offer. That's what this is going to turn into.
Okay.
That's what this is for.
Gotcha.
So
I see now. That makes more sense, and at the same
that
time,
has nothing to do with the high schools. High schools aren't paying these kids.
Oh, no, I knew what they were, but it's just like I wasn't sure if we were talking about in terms of recruiting, like getting players to go to certain high schools using NIL.
No. It's you know. I mean, if a high school does that, I mean, I don't know what the sanctioning bodies. Can you imagine getting caught doing something like that? That's, you know, the punishment for that. If you're going to do this, the punishment for something like you just said has got to be the death penalty for a year. Your program is done for a year. A year.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with it anyway. It just doesn't make sense for high school. I mean, you're looking at high school kids too.
What if you're a lacrosse player.
Yeah.
What if somebody came to you and said, you know, Jackson, you've developed into quite a long pole player. I would like for you, bless you, I would like for you to promote this STX product, and I'm going to give you $1,000. What would you say?
I mean, at that point, if it's legal, yes. I mean, if you're going to make money, but that's the problem I fear as well. I mean, you're talking to high school kids, not college kids, not grown adults. I mean,
well, I think there's going to be stipulations on this where these kids are minors.
Well, I mean, I wasn't even talking about that. Just how they can manage money. I mean, if you're going to
give well, I'm 53 and I struggle.
I don't know. I just don't. It just doesn't make sense. Would I encourage Florida, if you know. Just don't get peer pressured by the other states. If you're going to make this decision, be confident in it. Don't just say, now Georgia did it, now we have to do it because Georgia did it. We got to make sure that if we make this commitment as a state, it has to be thought out, planned. Because I look at the NCAA, when they made the NIL, they made it, threw it out there with no regulations, no stoppages, and that's when it turned into this whole mess. I need it, or Florida needs it to be, they have to have regulations and certain ways to back it up so it doesn't blow up.
If this... Okay, you look at Georgia's NIL, and I'm pulling it up now because I want to make sure I get it right here. Georgia's NIL law. The Southeast has been pretty good about staying away from it. I believe, and I want to find it in here. Georgia has now become the latest of 30-plus states to adopt NIL principles for its high school athletes. There are a lot of schools, and it's somewhere in this article I put up. All the big states have it. California has it. New York has it. Oh, Georgia has it. Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia allow it, but Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi, and South Carolina are among the states that do not. Well, now that Georgia has done it, the rest of the dominoes will fall, and that's just the way that's going to go, including Florida.
Yeah.
So, and then Georgia did something else. They made a policy where no longer in certain classifications will private schools play public schools, and they split them in half. And that's an argument, Knock, that you wanted to discuss because it touches on the FHSAA now reevaluating metro and suburb. What do you know about that?
Well, it sounds like they're tabling that discussion, which, with the FHSA means about 3 years. Maybe we'll have a decision out about it. But I am curious to see what they do with it because they want to reevaluate the situation. And I mean, when did they go away from the traditional format?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, okay.
They said they would do this for 2 years. This is the second year.
Yeah.
There are definitely its pros and definitely its cons. Its pros, Coco doesn't have to go down and play Cardinal Gibbons for a state championship. That's a pro. I don't care how you slice the pie. The con to it, I believe a big con to this is recruiting. I think, doing something like this tells a college football coach that, what, the best teams in the state are in these metro pockets, right? And even the sanctioning body of the state agrees with that. So unless I'm not even sure how they would do this. What were they proposing?
Well, they didn't really have any kind of plan outside of just the fact they were reevaluating whether they wanted to go back to the traditional format, or in some case not go back to it 100%, but go back to a little bit more. So maybe where there's a little bit more competition, because I'm guessing in certain classifications, in the suburbs versus the metros, the metros maybe face a tougher one versus where the Suburbans aren't facing as tough a competition in the postseason. So maybe they're trying to look at it competitively to try and mix it. Because I don't think they want to go back to it, but I think they still want to tweak with this.
According to Statline Sports Network, private schools won 39 of the 78 titles in classes 3A to A, despite public schools being a majority of the programs that compromise those classifications in Georgia. So half of the titles they won, private schools. You know what? I don't know. It says their football team. One of these football coaches says our football team went 9-1 against public schools and outscored them 39-11, and went 0-2 against private schools and got hammered, including in the playoffs to end our season. Coco's always been competitive with Cardinal Gibbons.
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas. So. But the Coco's the exception to this. I can think of, Rockledge having to go south and play schools. To me, separate, and I get what people are saying. We shouldn't have to do it because these teams here in this county, we don't have the numbers that those private schools can put. St. Thomas walked 85 guys out on the field, Knock.
Oh, yeah.
We can't do.
And they had guys on that roster that weren't even dressed.
We need 3 schools in Brevard County to combine to do that. Yeah. And if you put MCC and only Trinity together, God forbid, you wouldn't even get 53 guys.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know.
The only thing that was interesting out of the FHSA proposal out of this was reevaluating the districts in terms of district championships where teams didn't necessarily have to play. So say, like unfortunately for Astronaut, they've still got to play Coco. Now, in this reevaluated format, Coco wouldn't have to play that game. They could find somebody else that's a little bit tougher so that way Astronaut is not playing a team that they're completely overmatched by.
I think as long as you schedule in your classification, for example.
Coco, I'd agree.
If you schedule so Coco and Astronaut, right? Nobody, listen, I'm not picking on Astronaut, but I don't think anybody wants, until Astronaut gets to where they want to be and Coach Halleck builds that program back, I don't think people want to see Coco run a clock on Astronaut.
Well, we know it hurts their rankings by the points.
And so my point is if Coco can say, well, instead of playing Astronaut, what if we scheduled the number 3 team, and what if Coco went and played a rematch with Bradford or Sumter?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And then if Astronaut could play somebody else,
right.
that's where they're at.
Exactly. Yeah. And then how you would determine a playoff guy out of that is, you know what? Obviously, records and rankings matter more this year. Rockledge would obviously be ranked higher, right?
Right.
So you go strength of schedule, you go wins, and then you compile district points. And, there's no perfect system. No. As we find out in college football, they're going to go to 24 teams eventually in the college football playoff. But there's no perfect system. Other than the fact that we don't get to go play the South Florida teams for a state championship, it's really the only thing I don't like about Metro and suburb.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, on the fact of, like, well, both things, the public and the private school, I think that for Brevard, at least, with our private schools of MCC and Holy Trinity, I think we benefit more with the Metro and Suburban and having them play in 1S because I think they have more of an ability to go out.
Holy Trinity's got a shot to win a state championship.
They really do. And then if you stick them up there with Georgia, I think it's only one. Like, all the private schools play in one bracket. It's not broken up. So that means they would have to be in the same bracket as St. Thomas, which just wouldn't benefit anybody. So from Brevard's standpoint, I don't know if it benefits us.
Unless we get more playoff teams. We had 9 last year.
Yeah.
We could have up to 10 this year. Go ahead.
Well, no, Jenny, go ahead and finish.
I was just going to say also on the point of what you were saying about what the FHSA was discussing. I don't know if you said it or Caleb said it, but that there may have been some discussion of like a district championship week then in week 11
that would
after
be
the
awesome.
season. That's what I was going to say. I would love that. If that's what we're doing and you have these teams' ability to go play whoever they need outside the district and then come back and play for the district championship to kind of alleviate the stress of picking a district winner, I think that would be great. And I think if that's the way they go, that's how they need to do it. So if that's the case, then I think that could be positive.
No, I like that idea. I think that would be great. Here's my question, though. Would you support, say, take the top 4 teams out of Suburban and have them face the 4 teams from Metro after the state championships, but almost like bowl games?
Here you go. Here's what I would like. I would support that. Here's the thing, right? If you want to do away with districts, right, and you want to open the scheduling up, then just stay with your ranking system and take the top 32 teams in each region and pair them up.
That's not a bad thing either.
Pair them up.
Yeah.
Let them go. And if Coco's 1 and Astronauts 32, there's your first round matchup.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the way it goes. And then you meet in the middle.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, that's also viable, and I think that would be good as well. The question would be, the only question would be is just because you have those big metro areas like Miami, how many teams would fill up in those classifications for Miami versus Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Tallahassee?
I don't know.
But no, I mean, like I said, though, you're right, though. There is no perfect system,
Right.
but I do like that idea.
But, and then so real quick before we get to this week's schedule, the rankings came out. The FHSAA rankings came out. Currently, we have 9 teams going to the playoffs. We have 1 in 4S Region 3 Vieira with a legitimate shot to get there if they can win some games down the stretch here. Vieira can be a playoff team this year. So real quick, I'll just let you know Vieira, I think I put it in the post, Heritage and Vieira. Heritage is currently the 4th best team in Region 3 in 4S. Their strength of schedule is a 1.83. They have 10.144 points. Vieira sits behind Toho, I believe, in that 9th spot. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, in that 9th spot. And they are roughly about 4 points out, Vieira. So, but Toho's strength of schedule is a negative 5.64. But to me, you look at the rankings this year, strength of schedule ain't where they're stacking these points. It's all about wins. And I keep saying it. If it weren't about wins and losses this year, Rockledge would be ranked higher. Point blank, end of story. You can't convince me otherwise. I'm sorry, but you just can't. Their strength of schedule compared to some of the other teams' strength of schedule this year tells me, based on where they're ranked in their own region, it can't be about strength of schedule. It just can't be.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, that's a shame. I think that strength of schedule should most definitely matter more than just wins and losses, just due to the fact of the value of a win versus the value of a loss, and that tells a lot about a team. But if that's how they're going to do it, then I mean, they got to be consistent about it.
Now, listen, I sit here and I defend Rockledge, but they are most certainly going to have their opportunity here in the coming weeks where none of this matters, because everything that Rockledge still wants to accomplish is very much ahead of them. And on your screen right now, as soon as I get the graphic off of this one, and on your screen right now let's look at the FHSAA rankings for 3S Region 3, okay? And let me get down here. I'm going to scroll down here. So you got Mainland, who is the top team. O'Galley, who is second. Now, O'Galley's strength of schedule is a 636. Here's the other thing that I'm curious about. And this is where I think the game against Osceola hurt them. Rockledge's strength of schedule is a 350. How is that possible? You got, maybe the FHSAA doesn't take into account
Do they take
an out-of-state opponent.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I don't know. They don't reveal it, so I don't know. But their strength of schedule is half of what O'Galley's is. And you look at the two schedules side by side, and it's not a knock on O'Galley. Rockledge's schedule is clearly tougher.
But yeah, by a long shot. I mean, O'Galley doesn't play slouches, but neither does Rockledge. I mean, you have Seminole, Kissimmee, Osceola, Trinity Christian, Duncanville, whether they value it or not. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot.
I was going to say, if they don't value Duncanville, then that's almost an empty game. So it's like a game that doesn't even count. They're playing shorthanded.
And that's unfortunate because that's not what Rockledge thought when they took the game.
No.
Right.
And then, if they're not going to count it towards strength of schedule, in my opinion, they shouldn't count that, not count the loss, but they shouldn't count it against them.
So then you have Merritt Island that's behind O'Galley. Okay, so Mainland's 1, O'Galley's 2, Westwood 3, Jensen Beach 4, Merritt Island 5, Satellite 6, and Rockledge 7. Now, look, I know people across the causeways are smiling and laughing and licking their chops because they're ranked ahead of Rockledge. Everybody's going to get their shot at each other coming up. And that's why our rankings, Space Coast Daily rankings, Florida Today's rankings, none of them matter. Who cares? Because these teams are going to settle this on the field. It's great to argue with somebody at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, right? That's what these rankings are good for. But it's all going to get settled on the field. Now, if these teams play each other and O'Galley beats Rockledge, and somebody still wants to put Rockledge ahead of O'Galley, well, then they're just stupid.
Well, here's my question, because you got 4 teams essentially that you said they're in Region 3 that make the playoffs. Ultimately, by the time we get to 4 weeks, do we have 4 playoff teams out of this district, or is it only 3?
We do. We did last year.
See, I always forget that you mentioned that. I know you mentioned that before.
I could be confident with 3. The 4th last year with Satellite was a last week jump. The only reason I say that is because Satellite still has to play Merritt Island and Rockledge. Rockledge still has to play Merritt Island and Satellite. So everything is going to shake itself out. I think O'Galley's played everyone but Rockledge of the 4 teams we're talking about. So I think a lot still has to be settled, whereas, if Rockledge were, to run the table, maybe someone could get bounced. Because, Satellite has a big game this week against Seabreeze that could determine their record going forward. So I think we could be confident with 3, and the 4th is 100% a possibility, but I don't know if I could guarantee it.
Last year it was Bayside that sat in that A spot up until the final week. And Bayside, they just had to win the game. They did not. They got beat, and Satellite jumped them at 5-5. And that's what happened, and I think it shocked everybody that Satellite got in there. But that was a great thing because then they nearly beat Rockledge a week later in the playoffs. So, yeah, look, we'll keep you updated each and every week. And again, Titusville, 6-0, right there behind O'Galley. Interestingly enough about that, though, I do want to take a look at one thing. I want to show you the difference between, hang on here, let me get to the region. Okay, so we go to Region 3, I believe it is. So you got Cocoa 1 with a strength of schedule of 11.50. Titusville's 2 in the region with a strength of schedule of a negative 2.25. Hudson's 3rd with a negative strength of schedule of 2.84. Of the other 7 teams ranked behind Cocoa, the highest strength of schedule is a 4.50. That's the highest, guys.
So Brevard has the top 2 seeds.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
I was about to say, and Titusville's got, at least a decent team.
And Palm Bay, I think, is going to get in. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Titusville's going to have, they got Calvary Christian, who's at least highly ranked in the, I was going to say, Calvary Christian, 12th in 2 Metro right now.
And here's the other, here's the other thing, too. Here's how you know strength of schedule doesn't factor, because the FHSAA told us that originally these rankings were based on strength of schedule, your opponent's strength of schedule, right, and wins and losses. So that even more tells me that this is all about wins and losses. Because if the FHSAA is still telling us that it's about your opponent's strength of schedule, then Rockley's are really screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was here the Cocoa jumped up quite a bit. Was that because of their win over
that's
Treasure
some
Coast?
kind of an error, man.
Yeah.
Was that an
How
overcorrection?
do you go from 37 in the state to 6? You go from 7 in the region to somebody screwed up somewhere.
I was about to say Treasure Coast is good, but I don't know if that good.
And guys, I got to be honest with you. Looking at these rankings, and I can't help but think some of these things are going to auto-correct as we continue to move forward.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, let's take a look. Kelly, we have any questions or comments? Or I know we've confused the hell out of everybody. No. But it is important to note that the top 4 seeds in each region. No, scratch that. The 4 district winners are guaranteed to go to the playoffs. The next 4 highest ranked teams, according to these FHSAA rankings, are at-large playoff bids. Now, district winners are only guaranteed to make the playoffs. They aren't guaranteed a seed. So let's theoretically say that Titusville upsets Cocoa, right? And they win the district. Titusville is still not going to jump ahead of Cocoa in the rankings. They're not. Okay, we see this. But Cocoa, being the higher ranked team, would have to travel to play Titusville Cocoa would travel to Titusville to play in the playoffs, and then week 2 it reverts to the highest seed. So last year, Palm Bay and Titusville played each other in the first round of the playoffs, and neither of them won a district championship. So, and if you are a high-seeded district team and you get paired with a higher-seeded district team, then you have to go on the road. So, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy how they do it. But there are no guarantees for a district winner other than you make the playoffs. That's it. That's all there is. And I know I butchered that, but you get the gist of it. So let's pull the schedule. That's last week. Let's pull up this week's Week 7 schedule. There you see it on your screen. Bayside is at Vieira this week. Seminole at Cocoa Beach at St. Edwards, Flagler Palm Coast at O'Galley, Heritage at Fort Pierce Central, Space Coast at Holy Trinity, Melbourne at Palm Bay, Satellite at Seabreeze, Calvary Christian is at Titusville, Astronaut is at Winter Springs, and MCC at Mount Dora Christian, Liberty Christians at Merritt Island Christian, and there was a game tonight as Calvary Chapel had a football game. So if anybody's got a score there, leave it in the comments. All right, guys, the 3 games on the network this week are we've got Melbourne and Palm Bay. Palm Bay's got new helmets. See them there on your screen? I like them. I like those helmets. They look nice. The game of the week is the Seminoles against the Cocoa Tigers, and we also have the Bayside Bears at the Vieira Hawks this week. So, all right, guys, Bayside and Vieira. Let's start there. For me, there will be no Chase Cromartie, I hear, this week. I believe Chase it depends. I know he has an injury. I won't disclose his injury, but I don't think he's playing this week. I don't know for sure, but I know based on Chase's injury history last year that Vieira more than has ample. Last year they used Eric Nelson in a speed option offense that was pretty effective at times. They nearly beat Merritt Island with it last year. Listen, Jackson, you saw Bayside last week. What did you see?
Yeah, I think now with that information that I think Bayside does have a better shot to win. I don't think Vieira is going to be awful.
Well, I don't know if
Chase.
he's playing or not. I'm just
if they don't have him, then I think Bayside. I mean, I talked to some coaches from Satellite and some people from Satellite after that game, and they told me that Bayside has a lot of talent. That they weren't. I mean, in the rain game, he said maybe that they weren't kind of used to their full potential in the rain and the downpour that we had down in south of the county. But yeah, Bayside does have a lot of talent. I mean, Caden Brabham, when they utilize him, which I feel like they're starting more and more. Braven's a good passer. Larry Francis is a great running back. He had 2 quick touchdowns early in that one against a very solid Satellite defense. So I think Bayside could come out here and make something happen. I think.
I'm told Chase is playing. Go ahead.
All right. Well, yeah, but still, I still think Bayside has the athletes to make this a game. That makes it interesting again. But I do think, with that being said, the problem is for Bayside is going to be their defensive setup. They're going to cover 4, and I think Satellite with Ethan Rafel was able to convolute that underneath. And I think Vieira's passing attack with Cromartie. Pillow.
Can't turn the ball over. 4 interceptions in the first half last week is unacceptable.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But, I mean, on the season, still 13 touchdowns to 9 interceptions for Cromartie. But I think that may be the X factor is having that passing attack because Bayside, they do have a good defensive front. They bring pressure, but the secondary they just kind of got beat last week. So I think that was going to be the X factor I was going to say, and the fact that it is there, I think that would be the difference. But I think going forward on Bayside's schedule, it gets tough. So I think this may be one of their best shots to pick up a win going for the rest of the season. I mean, they're at Merritt Island, then they play O'Galley, then I think they have a bye week then they're at Jensen Beach, and then they play Heritage. So this is going to be a game I know Bayside's going to want to go out and win very much. So I think this is going to be a close matchup. I mean, they surprised me last week.
I do too. I think it's going to be close. I like Vieira in this one.
I do too.
If Chase is playing, I like, listen, I know Chase, and, I know how frustrated he must have been with himself with those interceptions last week. And you go back and look at them, and, I mean, they got to be corrected. And anytime you fumble the ball 4 times or throw 4 interceptions or you have 4 bad punts or whatever it is, anytime you shorten the field for the other team, you're just not going to win football games. Knock, how do you see this one?
I think Vieira wins, but I think they pull away late. I just don't know if Bayside's going to be able to keep their defense off the field enough to allow them to get and stay fresh. So I think Vieira, it's going to be close most of the way, but I think Vieira pulls away late and they win by 10.
Yeah, I mean, I was just say one more thing. My key for Bayside offensively too is something I just want to stress. I think they need to complement their strong run game with the pass game because I've seen Caden Brabham. He's a good passer. They just don't. Their game plan, they've committed to the run. And Larry Francis is a great running back, but I think you can make that running game another level better if you complement it with a pass more. Come out on some downs, just throw a quick slant if you're not confident, but you got to at least incorporate it because when they were doing that against Satellite, the run game was opening up. They were going back to it, and Satellite wasn't putting 11 guys in the box expecting the Francis run up the middle. So I think for Bayside, in order to give themselves a good shot offensively, is to just give Brabham some chances. Let him throw the ball. I mean, they have some good receivers as well. I mean, they lost Michael Parks and Isaiah Cordero, but they still have guys out there. So I think for Bayside offensively, they got to incorporate the passing game.
Cocoa Beach is at St. Edwards. Let me take a minute here to talk about Cocoa Beach, if I could, because I had a really good conversation with someone. Because it bothered me that we had high expectations for Cocoa Beach, and it just hasn't come to fruition. So it puzzled us as to what was going on. Well, I've got some answers, and I just want to let people know because I think that it's important. Listen, they have lost a lot of good players this year to injury. Since the beginning of the season, Cocoa Beach has lost their wide receiver, their cornerback, their starting main running back, starting middle linebacker, and their other best defensive player. They've also lost 2 starting offensive linemen and a starting defensive lineman. Now, as the individual tells me, and they are 100% correct, they said bigger programs can withstand those losses. There are no programs in Brevard County that can withstand those losses, and certainly not Cocoa Beach. They also had a couple of coaches leave that really put an unfortunate situation on Coach Waldrop. But listen, Coach Waldrop is a man of faith, and that is a program that I know believes in him. And if anybody can pick this up from this season and turn it around and have the type of finish that you can go into the offseason with momentum with, it's Ben Waldrop. And it is those great kids at Cocoa Beach that we met when we went over there and did those interviews. Those are some awesome kids. I asked the one kid, and I apologize, I don't mean to say kid, student, athlete, but I asked him about what did he do, and he owned an ice cream company, right? He walked around the beach and sold ice creams. And I asked him, and I said, well, does that help with the girls? And he's like, oh, you betcha. So it's a great school. And, I saw their athletic director today, Coach Ted Kimmy, was at the diving meet. Listen, the people are in place. It's an unfortunate season for Cocoa Beach, one that's unexpected, but they will pull it together. And I'm going to pick them to beat St. Edward.
I think they could. I mean, these teams are both 1-4. I mean, they match up. And this is a team through sports, I mean, I play lacrosse, but I feel like this is almost like one of those Indian River teams that almost feels like a mini Brevard. They come up here for a lot of sports. So I think it's a game Cocoa Beach will want to win. St. Edwards is a team they can beat, I think. The injuries are, I'm glad I found that out, so I know that answer.
Right.
But now that they're starting to, deal with them, teams overall will get better. They're not flatline. When they get the injuries, they may dip down, but then they start to the next man up, and then they start to figure it out. So I think they may be adjusting a lot better now. And I think Cocoa Beach should come out and win this one.
Knock, you gonna take?
I want to take Cocoa Beach as well.
Flagler, Palm Coast, at O'Galley. Chris Sands always tells me that Flagler, Palm Coast coming in. He plays them every year. Or in one form or another. But anyway, he always tells me they're always a tough football team. To me, any team in 3S, Region 3, Cocoa, O'Galley, Satellite, Rockledge is off this week, Merritt Island, unless they're playing a district game against each other and Satellites at Seabreeze, they all better be careful. Because this is your prototypical trap week before you get into districts. You're looking forward to O'Galley, man. They want their flowers, man. You know what I'm saying? They are chomping at the bit to get into this district play hard. They're already 2-0, and they got a leg up on everybody else. But we all know the team they want. They're not looking past anybody. But Chris Sands and CFAT and Coach Guy, all of them there, they aren't going to let this team look past Flagler, Palm Coast. I like O'Galley, and I like them big this week.
Yeah, I'd agree. I like O'Galley. I don't know if I would say big confidently, just because you look at they have one common opponent. They both played a solid Bishop Moore team out of Orlando. O'Galley beat them 12-10. O'Galley low scoring defensive game. Flagler, Palm Coast beat them 28-14. Pretty much the same week, 1 week apart. So, just by that comparison, their 2-3 record. This is still a solid team, and Coach Sands knows that. They've played this team the past few years. They beat them. Again, I think they will beat them, but I do think this one, as you said, could be a trap game. I think they can't overlook it. They just got to go play their game. I want to see. I've said this for 6 weeks. Make it 7. I want to see their offense come out and score some more points. But I think this is a game they can't overlook, but it can help them going forward. I think this is a strong team to play before district play, but not one that could hand you an obvious loss.
Who you got, Knock?
I think it's going to be a close game. Until O'Galley shows me that they can play offensively, that they can play with a lot of points, and they can move that ball. Again, I go back to last week. Heritage put a lot of points on Merritt Island. O'Galley struggled to put points on, again, Merritt Island.
But here's what I heard this week. I'm going to play O'Galley, okay? Here's what I heard. Yeah, but it was terrible weather. It was raining all night.
But it's the same.
They're a running football team. They're a running football team.
They run the ball with Tay Welch and Delvonte Williams. And
that's the perfect weather you want.
And here's the thing I'll say. It's the same excuse for Merritt Island.
An update on O'Galley. They do get Sam Thompson back on that offensive and defensive line.
Yeah, give me
this
O'Galley.
week. Okay, that changes things up because that's a man on a mission now.
Yeah.
Right, but that still goes back to his point with Bishop Moore. I just don't know that they're going to – even getting Sandman back's great, but they still weren't scoring a lot of points. They played Bishop Moore. They only scored 12 points. So we'll see. If they can get Amari Crooms, that short passing game that they had against Cocoa, that really worked. I don't know if they did it last week or not, but the slants were there, the little outs, the little quick throws, Crooms to his receivers – that worked. I don't know if they went to it. I don't know. Again, I didn't get a chance to watch that game last week.
We're going to see him in 2 weeks because I got in touch with Coach O's last week, and we're going to do the O'Galley Rockledge game, and I couldn't be more thrilled about that. Talked to Cody Queen this week, too. Gentleman that does the PA, great guy. I was on his show. There's a quick plug for you, Cody. Morning, Melbourne. Check it out every day. You can find Cody on Facebook, A Morning Melbourne. And look, this is a district that is struggling mightily offensively. Now, Merritt Island wasn't, but they have since run into
The
that
defenses.
wall.
Then they've hit the defenses.
Then they hit the defenses. That's correct. All right. We all like O'Galley. I like them big. You two like them close,
I like them
right?
close, but
Okay.
I'll take O'Galley.
All right. Heritage will get, my prediction right now, Heritage is going to be one shutout away after Friday night, going down to Fort Pierce Central. And I think they're going to just run them out of the south part of the county down there. And I like Heritage big in this one. And I like them to get their fifth shutout.
Yeah, I like them big in this one as well. I mean, Palm Bay shut them out, and we saw how Heritage handled Palm Bay earlier on the season. So, yeah, I think the shutout's more than possible. What I'll say, I expect them to win this one big, but this is another one that I don't know if they could lose the game, but I just don't want them to make it a trap game. I don't want them to overlook this one because it's not an awful team, but I do think, based on the talent they have and what they did last week, especially against Vieira, I like Heritage big, and the shutout's a big possibility.
Melbourne at Palm Bay. Jackson, you go ahead. And what do you see in this one? And then I'll give you my thoughts.
Yeah, I think Melbourne's got to ride the hot hand. They've won 2 weeks in a row. Their offense has got to keep building. But I do think, just by the way Palm Bay plays, I think that they're going to be able to wear down Melbourne's defense offensively. Defensively, I think they'll be all over Melbourne. I just don't think Melbourne can make it 3 straight. I got the Pirates in this one.
I'll take the Pirates in this one, too. Not going to know you're on this one. 37. This is the 45th time these two teams have got together. The rivalry on Babcock Street, the 45th time. Palm Bay leads the all-time series 37-7. I was there a couple of years ago and doing this game with Billy Palmer on when we were playing the in-county schedule, and I broadcast the game with Billy Palmer, and it was the first time ever Melbourne had gone over to Palm Bay and won, and they shut them out. They beat them pretty good, and but 37-7, Palm Bay is all-time over.
As a Melbourne alum, I can proudly say I'm part of one of those wins.
Melbourne's won 3 in a row over the Pirates.
Right, and it was hard to beat them. I think I saw one in 04, and I got one in 07. But
You got 2.
Well, I was a freshman in 04. I didn't play, so I don't count that one. I was only a freshman.
Okay.
But I do count the one in 07. But, I mean, this will be an interesting game. One thing to note here, the last 2 games, and you go back to even the game that they played Orange Park in, when Melbourne has 25 carries or more, they've won their last 2 games. Camarion Johnson's had over 200 yards rushing in the last 2 games. Padala hasn't thrown nearly as much as we saw at the beginning of the season. So my curiosity is, and you go back to that Titusville game, Palm Bay gave up nearly 249 yards on the ground on 40 carries against Titusville. So if Melbourne can keep it on the ground.
Digging deep, alum, ain't you?
Hey, I'm looking for stuff. I'm getting ready.
No, that's good stuff. That's quality
but
stuff.
but that's the thing, though. I mean, that is a big difference. You go back to the last couple of weeks, what they've had to change offensively and scheme-wise, it's really kind of benefited them to run the football more. They just aren't there yet as a passing team.
I think Palm Bay's a team that's progressively getting better as you look at different. Look, they played Astronaut last week. They got an opportunity to get in the end zone a bunch of times. 49 points they put up. Now, I don't think they're putting up 49 on Panucci's defense, but I do think that they get the win in this one. I think they snapped the Bulldogs' 3-game winning streak, and I think they in the series and snapped the Bulldogs' 2-game winning streak that they have going on right now. Also, Satellite is at Seabreeze. I like the Scorps in this one to go up to see. This is not going to be easy, even though Seabreeze is 1-4. I think Seabreeze is going to present some problems for that Satellite offense, but I think defensively, I think this is where the game is won for the Scorps. I see this as, 25-10, 25-12 type of game, but I like Satellite in this one.
Yeah, I think the Scorps can win this game. They got to go up to Daytona, but they're always a tough team. I mean, I talked to Coach Helton. He actually came by walk-ons after we were all packed up and leaving. So I got a chance to talk to him, and he said, he knows this team. They're a tough one despite their record, but he thinks they can go in there and win that game. And he said that's one that he wants to pick up a win on, especially. So I think Satellite can do it. I agree with you. I think it could be like a 24-14. I think it's one where their defense could limit Seabreeze. I mean, I think that's where Blake Boda came from a few years ago, but I think since then, I was talking to Logan about it a few weeks ago as well. I mean, Seabreeze over time has been a solid team up there, but recent years they've kind of been dipping down. So I think Satellite's got to go in there, pick up a win before they hit the district, and I think they will be able to.
We were talking about a minute ago to backtrack. You were talking about Palm Bay and Melbourne in that battle, and Rockledge just got an off week. But looking at that district, and we're talking about having the O'Galley and Rockledge game coming up in a couple of weeks here on Brevard Sports Network. Commodores have not beat the Raiders since 2008. Rockledge is 30-5. Against Brevard County in the last 5 years. So
wow.
Yep. So if anybody's happy to see district play come, it's Rockledge. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that stat. I also want knock Seabreeze or Satellite.
I'm going to take Satellite here. Their defense can keep them in any ball game. Hopefully their defense can get them some turnovers, give them some short fields, but I like them.
All right, the next game up on the docket, Calvary Christian at Titusville, gentlemen. I know that Calvary Christian is 5-1, but the combined record of the opponents that they have beaten, I think they had like 5 wins in all. I mean the combined record of the opponents they have beaten is not very good. I definitely like Titusville in this one, especially at home. But listen, Calvary Christian. In playing those teams that weren't as good as they were, this is a potent offense. They're averaging 35 points a game. So, we'll see, what that defense can do. If Calvary Christian can put up some points, then we may have to see the arm of Josiah Allen, who showed us that he can do it a couple of weeks ago in that 35-29 shootout win. But, he was 8 out of 12 for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. We'll see. But I like Titusville in this one. I think Titusville going into the Cocoa game is 7-0.
Yeah, I think this is Titusville's toughest test of the season, in my opinion. I think this is one that they're going to have to play good football. I mean, I've seen them play really strong, and I've seen some games they've dipped down, but I think this team is at about the same level. I look at the rankings right now as Fleming Island, who they beat a few weeks ago in a close game. Fleming Island's strength of schedule is a 17. Calvary Christians is a negative 1.9. So I think, although their record shows it, I think this is a team that is at the same level or even a little bit worse than Fleming Island. So I think Titusville can come out and win this one as well. They got to keep winning the close games, though.
5-21. That's the combined record of Calvary Christian's opponents. It's 5-21. Their lone loss came to Bailing Jesuit, 16-14.
I mean, for me, this is just Titusville's game to win. I think, and I agree with you, Alan. They stay undefeated. My question is I think that Titusville's defense can nullify that air attack, and I think the fact that Titusville wants to keep it on the ground as much as they do. And again, going back to, I know the Palm Bay game was a couple of weeks ago, but they ran for 250 yards.
That's
against a very stiff.
Gonna be.
I think they're going to run the football, and I think it's going to be over and over, just a heavy, heavy dose of Lopez and Stevens, and it's going to be those two guys that get done for them.
Be interesting if they can't pick up the win, because then they got to go into Cocoa, having lost their first game of the year. It'll be interesting to see how this one comes out, but I don't think the Titusville Terriers are going to have to worry about this. Let me just say this: Astronauts going to pick up their first win tonight. They play, or this week, they play 0-6 Winter Springs. MCC is at Mount Dora Christian, just based off of everything they've been this week. I'm going to pick MCC. All right, guys, let's go back to the big one this week between Seminole and Cocoa. Jackson?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a good test for Cocoa. I think this is a team that we've heard is a little bit more talented than their one loss.
Than they
to Treasure
appeared
Coast.
to be.
Yeah, Seminole's always a good team. This game last year, I remember, went to overtime. Cocoa barely falling in that one, and they're calling it the revenge tour this year. They got Jones again, they got Venice again, they got St. Thomas, who they've all but gone out and beat. But yeah, this is another one on that checklist of teams that they've lost to in recent years they want to get back against, and I think they'll be able to. I just think Brady Hart showing consistency. At first, I thought maybe he was peaking and was going to come
He
back
had a rough
down.
week last week, but I think he gets it together this week. I mean, he looked. You know, it was funny because there were moments last week where he looked like Tom Brady, and there were moments he looked like Joe Flacco. I mean, there wasn't a gray area for Brady last week. Javen Boggs and C.J. Bragg made some nice catches that were thrown behind him, but then Hart would throw a dart. You know, I mean, but for Coco to win this football game, he's got to be more consistent than he was last week, and Naki's got to be like he was against St. Thomas.
And I think we will see that. I ultimately think we will. Again, I think what we've seen the last couple of weeks is they've really wanted to incorporate some other things because we really haven't seen the attack that we saw against Venice and we saw against St. Thomas Aquinas. We haven't seen that. We didn't see it against O'Galley, and we didn't see it last week against Treasure Coast.
Yeah,
But I expect a running clock.
Yeah, no, well, you think so? I don't. And in talking to some people in the know, everybody's going to say, and even I said this, that, well, you know, Treasure Coast beat Seminole 12-9, and Coco ran the clock on Treasure Coast. Well, here's what I found out about that Treasure Coast Seminole game. Seminole had 5 of their 3 and 4 stars out of that game injured. They played in a monsoon, and it just wasn't. Now Seminole's healthy. You look at their schedule. You look at what they're starting to do to some of these teams that they're playing. It's going to be a tough game for Coco. But Coco's already proven they can beat teams like this. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near a running clock. I do like Coco. I like the Tigers 31, 21, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, you know, I think this could be a game that maybe could be like Jones or Venice, but I just think this team has matured since then as well. So I think they can win by a little bit more than that, but I don't think it'll be necessarily a running clock, but I do think they'll be able to handle Seminole pretty well. I mean, they take them in the jungle as well at home, which is going to help them, and I just think that defense can swarm them as well. So, I mean, Seminole has a lot of talent, but I truly think that they'll be able to win this one by 2 scores or more.
One more time, the game's on the network, Melbourne at Palm Bay. It'll be Seminole at Coco and Bayside at Vieira. Look, check when you wake up tomorrow, check the graphs, the captions for game previews, and coming up tomorrow on Brevard Sports Network is Cape Coast Conference Swimming Championships all day, and we'll pack up, run home, and get ready for football tomorrow night. Very excited. Again, guys, not closing thoughts tonight.
Just a great slate, and looking forward to seeing Palm Bay and Melbourne. Always a great rivalry, and can't wait forward to see what tomorrow night's results are going to be. I'm really curious that Calvary Christian Titusville game. That's the one I'm keeping an eye on.
Jackson?
And my final thought, I'll open with a question here. This is something I kind of thought of earlier this week, and it's just a kind of a concept or an idea in Brevard County. So we got 2 8-man teams right now, Calvary Chapel and Merritt Island Christian. Would you like to see us expand 8-man? Let's look at teams that are, I think, solid, but I think could elevate themselves big in 8-man. Look at Space Coast. Look at even a team like Cocoa Beach. Or I would love to see Edgewood and West Shore dabble in football. Imagine we get a 6-team Brevard
County.
County.
Press box.
They do.
Yeah.
And I think imagine we have a 6-team Brevard County 8-man conference. Do you think that would? What are your thoughts on that?
I love the idea, and I think some schools look at this like, and you know, Coach Handwork and I discussed this in his interview. He wasn't keen on dropping down because that's what these schools would do. They would have to drop from 11 to 8, and there's a part of you that admits that there's some sort of defeat in doing that. But I don't agree.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
What I look at like Brevard is like the size of this county, the teams that we have. Let's say a team like Space Coast drops 8-man. I mean, they're working through retooling, but if you dropped 8-man, they could go compete for a state championship, I think.
Yeah.
I think a Brevard County 8-man conference could be powers.
still put guys in college.
Absolutely.
The Moncalvos, the Handwork, Nevad. Morgan Babb. They've all played college football. You're not sending anybody to go play for Alabama or Texas, right? But you're not doing that at 11-man anyway. Yeah. So, I think that's a fantastic. I don't know what that would take.
Yeah. Well, so you said Space Coast,
I was
Edgewood,
throwing out
West Shore.
Space Coast, Edgewood, West Shore.
He was just rolling some of the teams that
I was just throwing out teams that I think, like those Cocoa Beach and Space Coast said because they're in the Sunshine State Athletics, so it would be a little bit easier.
No, I got you. I don't. I don't necessarily disagree with the thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea for Space Coast. But again,
it's fun.
8-man is fun. But again, you would have to, for one, you got to, 8-man, it would be interesting to see if they would actually swallow that pill. Because as you said, you were admitting it.
There's
You were
a
at least
pride
admitting
thing
there is a pride thing there.
Right.
Edgewood would be fun.
I think
West
those
Shore will
two-
never do it. I wish
I know-
they
I
would.
know they
West
won't,
Shore will
but-
never do it. I mean, they will never do it. I don't know why.
I had a hell of a
They never-
diver today, though. She was awesome. Let me just give her props right now. Liza Hicks won the girls' title today, and Palm Bay had a diver today that was, the young man was incredible, Lucas Smith. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to ask you, what's that like? Because I've never actually had the chance to call swimming or diving. What is that like?
It's fun. These not just football, but these student athletes are incredible. To see a Brevard County student athlete jump off of a diving board, twist 4 times in the air, do a flip, and dive into the water with a minimal splash. It's just impressive to see. And tomorrow we're going to watch the best athletes in the county, because swimmers and wrestlers are the best athletes. They train the hardest. They work the hardest. They do the craziest things to their bodies. I mean, they're all chiseled like Greek gods and goddesses, right? I mean, because that's how hard they work, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like they're like fish swimming through the water, you know? I mean, and the satisfaction that I get out of it is I'm just in awe of how good these kids are at what they do and how fast they are. And I'm excited tomorrow to go cover swimming all day. I really am. You might not see me in any football games tomorrow night, but you know what? I'm excited to go cover swimming tomorrow.
No, that's cool. Like you said, I've never had that opportunity to broadcast it. So, like I said, because I know you've done those before, so you've had a couple of years now doing that.
We do. Guys, thank you. Have you got anything?
Thank God for Brevard County sports.
That's right. And I want to give a big shout out tonight to Scotty Raymond, Eddie Kinzel and company down at Heritage for their JV team. Listen, I don't know if they're playing a JV championship, but I don't know that you need to, because the best JV team in Brevard County are the Heritage Panthers. They are stacked and tooled down there for a couple of years to come. I think they pitched 2 shutouts tonight and a jamboree. So Scotty and Eddie, just a great job they do down there. Scotty Raymond, and just amazing how much he loves that program, that junior varsity program. And man, just a great job by them. We had them earlier this year against Vieira, and it wasn't close. But, guys, thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for tuning in tonight. This has been the UbrZati High School Football Preview Show. And one more time, down the Week 7 schedule, Bayside at Vieira, Seminole at Cocoa Beach at St. Edwards, Flagler, Palm Coast at O'Galley, Heritage at Fort Pierce Central, Space Coast at Holy Trinity, Melbourne at Palm Bay, Satellite at Seabreeze, Calvary, Christian at Titusville, Astronaut at Winter Springs, MCC at Mount Dora. Calvary Chapel played tonight, and Liberty Christian is at Merritt Island Christian. For Caleb Brown, for Anthony Knockreiner, for Jackson Robb, I am Alan Slaughter-Zinski. This has been a presentation of Brevard Sports Network. We'll see you 9 o'clock tomorrow morning from the Cocoa Beach Aquatic Center. Have a great night, everybody.